Hello, Physionic, dedicated Physionic podcast. You're going to have to excuse the interesting lighting that I have going on. I'm recording in my home kitchen, but the lighting here is pretty poor. Different warmths. Warmths, is that the plural of warmth? Warmths of light, so it looks a little odd. But the information will be solid as always. So let's get into what this podcast is going to be about. Today, I'd like to discuss the microbiome, but not the gut microbiome, specifically the skin microbiome and how the ocean affects our skin. Do I have your attention? Are you intrigued by what I will be saying? Well, okay, so if you swim in the ocean, then it's probably something you want to pay attention to. So interestingly, there's a study that was done recently looking at the skin microbiome of a bunch of different people from different backgrounds, some different areas and different ethnicities and things of that nature. And they found that, well, unsurprisingly, that those individuals had a different microbiome. If you're not familiar with what a microbiome is, it is essentially the usually considered the symbiotic relationship that we have with, or presumably symbiotic relationship that we have with bacteria and viruses and fungi that usually are attributed to what's found in our gut, but are also found really essentially everywhere in our body and on our body. So in this case, our skin. And that microbiome helps us in particular situations. And that's why our nutrition is so important beyond just the obvious of, weight loss and weight gain and muscle mass and things of that nature, which are certainly incredibly helpful and incredibly important, maybe even a priority. But the microbiome is starting to get a lot more attention because of its impact on our health. And as we're learning more about it, we're understanding that these bacteria can go through different metabolic properties in terms of taking things that might be inert or dangerous to us and then making them inert, making something dangerous inert, and or making something dangerous and inert to something that's useful for our body and adds to our health. Now, that said, that specific microbiome is specific to our situation, our health, our habits. If you're healthy, generally healthy, then usually you tend to have a healthier microbiome as well. That's kind of facilitating that overall health. Not always the case, and as we learn more, I'm sure that'll either strengthen that stance or it'll weaken that stance. But I digress. How does that relate to the ocean? Well, this study looked at individuals from different backgrounds, and they've, of course, found that the microbiome between those individuals was certainly different. Makes sense. Their skin is going to be different just because of their nutrition and their background and things of that nature. But interestingly, when they took a dip in the ocean, their microbiome was suddenly the same afterwards. Well, I think it doesn't take a scientist to figure that one out, but the microbiome that was on their skin was washed away. But not only that, it was replaced by a microbiome that was related to the ocean. Okay, well, what's the big deal? So what? I'm sure it happens pretty often, especially when we take a shower. Maybe we don't add another microbiome, but we wash off the old microbiome, and then that has to repopulate itself over time until we take another shower. Well, the thing is with the ocean is that it's not necessarily always the cleanest. It's not always the, I guess I should say, least or most pollution free. So, and this certainly applies to lakes. This applies to any large body of water. And this is a situation in which our environment and how we treat our environment has a very specific, individual, unique impact on our health. Because what they found is not only did the microbiome change to something that was universal across all the different skins of all these different individuals, but it definitely came from the ocean. but it was filled with particular pathogens like cholera. So cholera is something that can cause a lot of distress, especially intestinal distress, and you definitely do not want that. So they did find various strains of cholera, and not only that, they found that the cholera that was in the ocean had a propensity to stick to human skin at a far greater degree than it would stick to essentially anything else that they tested. So cholera sticks to our skin when we get in the water at a much greater degree, or latches on with a greater affinity than essentially anything else in the ocean. So we get in the water and we just become this magnet of cholera. In this particular situation, I'm sure there are other bacteria as well, some helpful probably, and some that are not so helpful, like cholera. So then they wanted to test, okay, well then how long does this stuff stick around? Well, you may want to take a shower after you get out of the ocean. Let's just put it that way, because it seems like some of these bacteria, not all of them, but some of these microbiome shifts last for over 24 hours. So if you don't shower 24 hours after getting in the ocean, some of those microbiota changes are still around. So you could still have cholera on your skin. Now, if it's on your skin, that may not necessarily be that much of an issue. But if it were to get into your body, that would pose quite a problem. Or if you were to ingest it, that would pose quite a problem. Now, on top of that, they also surmise that most likely this microbiota change is also a contributing factor to dermatitis, so having skin infections and skin disease. So bottom line is, if you get in the ocean, which feel free to continue doing that, you should, at the very least, take a shower as soon as possible after getting out of the ocean, because the bacteria on your body have changed to an unfavorable state, to bacteria that aren't necessarily there to have your best interest at heart. So that's what I wanted to relay to you. Of course, I'll have things linked for you so you can check out the information for yourself. I thought it was really interesting, kind of an interesting exchange between nature and how we pollute nature, and how nature has an impact on our body, and all kinds of kind of a little 360 cycle, which is nice to see, although it's a little unfavorable for us. All right, with that said, I hope I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with you in the next one. Have a good one, guys. See ya.